all your school rugby, all in one place. This is NextGen 15.
Hello, welcome back to the NextGen 15 podcast. We are back, and we're back with a bang because we've got a new co-host, a permanent co-host in the form of Will Roberts. Will, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Angus. Very excited to be here and looking forward to the chat that we can bring across sort of age grade and youth rugby over the next sort of couple of weeks, months, years, and yeah, it should be good. I mean, we've probably started in one of the most idyllic weeks for age grade rugby going, haven't we? So we can start as we mean to go on.
We've certainly picked a good one, haven't we? We're going to get into some stuff because we've got some big news to bring to anyone. But it's good to be back. We've had a bit of a long hiatus on the podcast. I've been scrambling around trying to work out how best to get it out whilst also touring the country, taking in the rugby. But we thought 2025 we've got to get it back with a bang. And just to let you know where to find us, everyone, we are on at NextGen 15. That's at NextGenXV across all your platforms. It's all the same everywhere, although you are going to be hearing some new news on some new handles in a little moment's time. But first of all, Will, good Christmas.
Yeah, lovely, thank you. Lovely, nice and relaxed, and we didn't have too much rugby over the festive period, but enough to get our teeth stuck into. One thing, Angus, I would like to open with is your thoughts on the Global Schools Challenge, because what a monumental occasion that was for NextGen 15. Being on the inside as you were throughout the whole period of that, just how proud were you of how that came about in South Africa?
I was proud of the guys on the ground playing their hearts out at Grey College. I mean, hats off to Bobby Joubert and to our own Tom Pullen, really, who were real driving forces down there. It was awesome. I mean, it was swelteringly hot. Everyone was roasting. But no, I'm proud of the guys on the ground, but more importantly, proud of all the players, particularly the guys that entered the draft and played in that invitational competition. That was a big leap of faith in what we could do, but more importantly, a big leap of faith in themselves. I mean, signing up, didn't know who they'd be playing for, didn't know who they'd be playing with, didn't know how good they'd be, how bad they'd be. They just knew that they wanted to go and challenge themselves, and that was the whole point. The hashtag running through it was Rise to the Challenge, and that was what those guys did. I'm not sure what it says about our ability to select a draft team that the NextGen 15 team actually won that competition, but no bias there at all. No. But no, very pleased to see those guys do that, and I really hope we can have a few more of those teams running out again in the future at loads of other competitions as well as I was going to say next year's Global Schools Challenge, but of course it's this year. We're into 2025 now, aren't we? And on the school side, Grey College, awesome hosts, awesome team. I mean, they're just frightening. Really are frightening. They're spectacularly good. But I was so pleased and so proud. Coming from this side of the hemisphere, to see Strathallan take down Oakdale, who are a really good team. Oakdale are a side that's expected to go really well in South Africa this season, and Strathallan taking them down was really awesome to see. Sort of brought back memories of their run on day one at the St Joseph's Festival back in October. So really, really pleased to see them going so well. Denstone College, gave it everything. Didn't get a victory, but really, really pushed themselves. But at the end of the day, you can't look any further than taking a massive hat tip towards Grey College, who were just awesome. But more importantly, I mean, the whole thing was all about getting players to come together, to challenge themselves, but also to go and experience something. And it was an experience of a lifetime for all those lads being out there in unusual conditions. It was, as I've said, it was baking hot, but also at probably the most famous school setting in a rugby sense that there is in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's sort of the stuff of myth and legend, and I know certainly speaking to the UK schools since they got back, that was a huge part of what it was all about for them. So yeah, really exciting, really, really pleased it got underway. But the sort of three guys on the ground that need a big hat tip in Tom and in Bobby and in Benny, who was in charge of the draft. They've all put in a massive shift, and I think they need a rest.
Yeah.
But they've done well.
They would have certainly had a good Christmas. Yeah.
They really will have. I know. Speaking of Tom over the Christmas period, I think we've all been struck down by some sort of lurgy. I think within about 2 hours of him touching back down at base, he was absolutely gone. But no, really cool, really exciting, and bring on 2025's version. We've got some big announcements to come, including location and a couple of the early sign-ups. So it's going to be pretty cool. And looking forward to it. Bit of December sun. Who doesn't like that?
Exactly. Can't get much better than that. And yeah, roll on this year's competition should be exciting.
Yeah, absolutely should. Yeah, absolutely should. I mean, well, talking of exciting things this year, we might as well give everyone the spoiler, because we can't keep them on tenterhooks.
No, we can't.
throughout the entire thing. Do you want to tell the world, or shall I? Well, I'll tell you what. I'll intro it. Because I'd like to embarrass you, which is that we have here at NextGen 15 admired and used you a lot, Will Roberts. We've admired your work, and we've done as much as we could to get you involved with us as possible over the years. And when we realised that you were back in the age grade game after a little hiatus, we thought we've got to get in touch and make this all come together somehow, and therefore Young Rugby is coming into the NextGen 15 family, and we're gonna have a big rebrand. And well, I'll tell you what, I'll let you tell everyone what the rebrand is and what sort of stuff we're going to be looking at.
Well, yeah, forget your Marcus Rashfords, forget your any other transfer. This is the biggest transfer of the January transfer window. Yeah, it's really exciting stuff. I think it's something that's been in the works for almost a couple of years now, really, between us. We've worked together so much, it only made sense to come under one umbrella. And Young Rugby is going to become the NextGen 15 Clubhouse, an area and platform in which people will be able to discuss the hot topics of age grade rugby, those that are beyond fans, those that live and breathe it. Like you and I, we know there are so many more, an ever increasing amount over the world, really, and it will give them one opportunity. We'll spark talking points. We'll speak to the top players. We'll hear about reaction and news from all the age grade competitions that we can get our teeth stuck into. It will link into the amazing live streams that NextGen will continue to put on, and there'll be more and more of those that will get even more bigger and grander as the years go on. So it's really exciting, and it will be a place for people to live and breathe age grade rugby, whilst also being able to get top coverage from NextGen as a whole. So it's really excited to get on board. It's sort of topped off by this podcast, which will be a great way for people to kind of get it all in one sort of place. But for those that are wanting to continue to scroll and keep up to date and impress people in pubs of who they know is the next best thing, then it's going to be the NextGen 15 Clubhouse, which is going to be a really exciting platform to be able to work in.
I don't know about impressing people in pubs though. I've been trying that for years, trying to impress people in pubs with my knowledge of school rugby. They tend to think that I'm a bit of an odd fish.
Depends on which pub you go into, I guess.
Yeah, very true. No, it's really cool. It's really exciting. We, as you say, we've been talking about it for a long time. It's really cool to bring it all together. I think we're going to get some awesome coverage out of it. I mean, you and I just talking before this about some of the exciting stuff that we could potentially see coming out is really cool. And I know we're going to get some, particularly with this the Under-18 Academy League window opening tonight. In fact, the sort of opportunity for us to produce some really cool stuff is really exciting, and I think we're going to see that, as you say, not just on social media, but across live streaming and across this podcast as well. We're going to see plenty of plenty of new and exciting content, but also just getting really close to some of the characters that are within the game. I mean, we're going to talk about him, I'm sure, endlessly over the course of the rest of this season. The guys like Henry Pollock, who we know have so much so much personality and so much charisma, and there is this drive, isn't there, that we're seeing
Mm.
at the top end of the game to really bring out a bit of the personality of players, and hopefully we're going to be able to do that at the those starting their journey and sort of show off a bit of their personalities and show off a bit of what they're about while still bringing you the same sort of wider brush coverage that there always has been here. So it's going to be good fun.
Will be.
And what's also going to be good fun is the Academy League.
It is.
Premiership Rugby Under 18 Academy League kicking off tonight, as I say. Slightly different, isn't it? Because we've lost 3 teams from last year, so the structure's changed a little bit. And actually, one thing I wanted to talk to you about that with is, so we've obviously got 11 teams, the 10 Premiership teams plus the Yorkshire Academy, split north-south, 6 in the south, 5 in the north, 5 rounds of games. So in the north, there's a bye week for each team. And then finals day. But what I wanted to pick your brains up about is, because I've been trying to work this out, I've not really heard back from anyone on it yet, but you're a man who's got his nose to the ground. Finals day, 6 versus 5, we've got a spare team. Do we know what happens with that?
Yeah, I'm not too sure either. I was actually told last year that there was going to be some big shifts to finals day, and we may not get every single team playing, which almost I don't mind because it increases the jeopardy of the games leading up to it. People need to win their games if they want to head to Kingsholm on the 16th of February, and that is how a final should be looked towards, something
Should feel that
to
way, shouldn't it?
achieve and to get to. So yeah, from what I've heard, that not all the teams are going to be playing at finals day. I may very well be wrong. I was told that way back last February. So, and you know how the rugby landscape is, it changed. It probably changed the following day after I heard it.
Oh yeah,
But
well, the chances of something that happened in February still being the same as March are
exactly,
almost nil.
exactly. So take that with a pinch of salt. But you'd imagine that a team is going to have to miss out. And it would be fascinating to see who it is. Not only is the sort of decrease of teams an interesting factor, but obviously the boundaries have shifted, and now different academies have access to different players that they wouldn't have had access to before. Especially like I know London was such an oversaturated market
Yeah,
for clubs previously, and now obviously you've only really got Harlequins and Saracens that are taking up
yeah,
that sort of that sort of mantle of one of the biggest pools of rugby players in England in around that sort of southeast London central sort of area. So it's going to be really interesting because all these teams are now picked to the max. You've now got not just 15 top players in each side, but 30 because of the way that these boundaries have shifted. So look, it's going to be a really interesting pattern, pretty hard to call.
yeah. It's really interesting. I mean, there's a few teams I kind of want to look at, but just with those boundary changes in mind, I mean, one of the ones that really stands out to me is Bath, who obviously
Yeah.
won the league last year, and with the boundary being redrawn, they've captured Wellington College, they've captured Cranley, and they've captured a fair chunk of Harrow as well. That's sort of 3 of the top 5, 6 teams in the country, and they're all falling under Bath's scope. I mean, they've done well out of the boundary changes, but it does make things pretty interesting because you're suddenly getting, for a lot of those guys, Bath's a long trip. It's
Yeah.
not close by. It's going to make for a pretty interesting dynamic.
It does, and as you say, yeah, it's great. It's great to pick up these kind of top schools, but yeah, what it does do is potentially create a bit more disconnect. You've got players that won't have played with each other as much, potentially haven't played with each other at all, and that are heading into a weekend this weekend, starting for the first time with each other. From hundreds of miles away. So yeah, it's a fascinating prospect. Could be a sort of poison chalice, really, in the eyes of Bath, but I'm sure we'll go through individuals and look at quality, and there are some key names obviously that stand out in that Bath side that could potentially just be the individual difference to get them to back-to-back titles. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, there's some fascinating ones, and actually, the battle in certain positions where you're going to have potential England players going up against each other just to get into the team
Yeah.
at Bath at the moment. And it's similar for others, Gloucester, who've always historically leaned very heavily on Hartpury, but they now also have Stourport and City of Oxford College in their catchment area. So they've got three big time ace colleges all in that region. I think they're actually captained this weekend by Radley's John O'Balding, so they've got some pretty outstanding schools in that environment as well. So they're another big beneficiary. And then one of the teams that I think is really interesting, fortunately, they're one of the teams that's given us their team sheet, is Saracens, who seem to be leaning very heavily on players from state schools in that sort of southeast region. A lot of Ravenswood boys, a lot of Campion boys. I'm just naming a couple off the top of the head, but that's a really interesting shift in that a lot of academies haven't necessarily looked that way. They've looked to shift players who are in state schools into, in Saracen's case, it would have been into Oakland's college, but it seems as though now there's a real emphasis on keeping them in those state schools and giving them the exposure that way.
Yeah, I think Saracens have put themselves in a really interesting position. I know they had a quite a unique setup to lead up to this competition. They played against Pile Boys High School in 3 games a couple of weeks ago, which was fascinating because they were able to come up against sort of South African competition, who was toured and basically clean sweep the whole of the UK until they head to Saracens, and then Saracens beat them on 2 occasions and drew the 3rd game. So they're a team that will be sort of excited to head towards Bristol on Saturday. I think obviously Finn Keylock's going to be really interesting. Obviously he'll be battling it out come sort of the end of the season. You'd imagine with James Lineker for sort of England honours in that 10 shirt. So it'd be great for him to get a sort of leg up with things. I know they're without Asa Stewart-Harris at 9, which could be a bit of a blow, but they've also got some other sort of England captain sort of a lot of boys that ended up in that November training camp that are featured there. So look, they're going to be almost a dark horse, which is not usual for a Saracen side, especially with the senior team. They usually always sort of picked up towards the top, but I think with this academy side, they could sort of quietly go about their business and end up in quite high rank towards the middle of Feb.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one, isn't it? That because of the makeup of all the various schools they're going to, much more wide range of schools probably than most sides will have on average in their starting team, so a lot more getting used to each other combinations. Well, I suppose that's where those early fixtures against the likes of Pile Boys High will make a bit of a difference, is just giving people that bit of game time together, because as we all know, once you're into the thick of it, particularly with a bit of a truncated tournament this year with only five games, being up to speed with what the bloke next to you is doing is pretty important.
100%. And I'm just looking, I mean, they start with 2 back-to-back away games. So I think they go away to Bristol, away to Gloucester, before sort of facing Chiefs at home. So that they'll be thankful they don't have to travel all the way down to Devon. But they've got to play 2 back-to-back away games to kick off against 2 sort of top sides. I mean, there's no shortage of top sides in this team, but you know what I mean. So they're going to have to travel on both occasions and probably pick up wins. This is the thing, if you want to get into that final, you need to pretty much win every game. And so they've been drawn a pretty difficult draw if they want to go away on their first 2 matches, obviously without a bye week, and travel all the way through the next sort of 6 weeks up till finals.
Yeah, you'd expect, wouldn't you, if you're to reach that final, if you don't win all your games, you're basically going to be at the mercy of points difference almost, because if you win 4 out of 5, someone else is probably going to win 4 out of 5, and you're going to be stuck there. It is worth actually just going through the fixtures for this first round. It's five games. That's a nonsense. No, I'm right. It is 5 games. 5 games every match day, and it all begins Friday, 3rd of January, which is today, Yorkshire Academy against Leicester Tigers. Then tomorrow, the 4th of January, Bristol Bears against Saracens, Exeter Chiefs against Bath, and Harlequins against Gloucester. And then on Sunday, the 5th of January, Sale Sharks against Northampton Saints. Northampton Saints, who keep reaching the final, but just not quite managing to get across the line. And they're going to be another team, actually, I think they're going to be strong again this year. They're in a, we talk about catchment areas. They're in a good catchment area. There's a lot of top schools around them. And that's the interesting thing about this league, the academy system. I mean, we've heard Pat Lam talk about this in the past, is that your catchment area is so important because it really impacts how many players. It's not necessarily going to mean that the top end is any better than anyone else, but it does mean that your depth of players coming through can be vastly different depending on where you are in the country. And as Pat Lam said, if you just simply don't have a 10 within that player pool and you desperately need a 10 in the academy, there's not a lot you can do about it. You just have to sit around and wait and organise a transfer once everyone's had their academy contract sorted. It's a pretty funny old world when it comes to that.
Indeed, and I think, this will drift us off topic, so I'll only talk about it briefly. But the bucking of the trend that Bath Rugby did this year of signing players straight out of different academies and trying to they picked up some of the top names. Obviously, that was with the demise of London South Central, formerly London Irish. So there was opportunity there, but to pick up Keputu Pelotu, to pick up Charlie Griffin, was sort of a massive pull by them, and something that will only come around once in a blue moon, because 9 times out of 10 these players will want to play for the club that they've been part of an academy with. So it's not going to come around often, which again, as you say, puts more emphasis on you getting the right players in your catchment.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, not to drift too far off into it, but I can't remember another time, certainly not in any recent era, where players have gone to a club that is not the one that they were in the academy league with, unless they were released by that academy and they've come through,
picked up elsewhere. No, not
which is
like they were.
Rarely is it 2 of the top talents in the entire country.
Two England starting under-18s players that were pinched. So yeah, interesting. And now Bath have kind of gone on the offensive and started openly signing under-18s well before well before March, April, where they usually sort of wrapped up. They're starting to stake their claim on players early. It's a revolutionary sort of way to go about things, and I'm sure something we'll talk about over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, because it's an interesting one, that, isn't it? Because obviously, traditionally speaking, the Academy League has been used as the sort of the final shop window before contracts are given. So, you play through the Academy League, finishes in mid-February. I think finals day this year is on the 16th of Feb, I think. And then you sort of have a little bit of a debrief, and then contracts are announced and spoken about over the course of the next couple of months. Bath have, as you say, completely bucked that trend. James Lineker and Sam Winters both signed over the course of the last 3-4 months for good long-term academy deals. There's a definite shift, isn't there, in Bath as to what to do, and I wonder if it's a reaction to the fact that they themselves got some guys sort of almost out of nowhere last year, and they're protecting themselves against similar thing happening to themselves.
I wonder if it will start a trend. I think in particular for clubs that potentially have these big sort of wide catchment areas where there's an opportunity that they're going to miss a player here or there, and sort of you'd almost think Bath might, when it gets to look, we're not going to predict what sort of teams they'll start putting out, but they might then, if they get to a game where they're already sewn up in sort of to confirm a position in the final round, they're not going to move, whatever, they might say to you, James Lineker, okay, we've seen all that we've seen from you, we'll rest you for finals day, let's have a look at this guy at 10 and sort of see how sort of that functions. It sort of puts these guys in your back pocket and allows you to focus on other teams. And I wonder if other clubs might start going about that. I imagine quite a few will stick to how they like to do it because they want to keep competition fresh and spirits high, because this competition means a lot to a lot of clubs. But I do think that people might start playing it in a bit more of a tactical game to try and sort of get the right players through the door for their senior side.
Yeah, because I mean, we don't often. Rugby's not a sport where often people do things that we've never seen before. Things pretty much follow a pattern. But it will be interesting to see how it goes. I mean, the other example of teams doing things slightly differently was a couple of years back when Steve Diamond was at Sale Sharks, and he would sign players on their first deal on sort of 5-6 year deals. Part of that was about salary cap management, but
Yeah.
it was something that had never been done before. No one else has really tried it. Although I do wonder if he might have another go at it up in Newcastle, just to tie down some of their young talent, before everyone else comes knocking. I know he's been a bit unhappy about people taking his players, but I do wonder if that's something we might see there. But as we say, I really wonder if other sides might look at what Bath have been doing and take a punt, particularly where it's those guys that are in and around an England under-18 squad. You have that confidence that they're well regarded outside of just your own academy. You look at Saracens, because we've got their team sheet at the moment. Jack Marshall and Noah Kaluri, who are in and around that England squad, whether they might look at something like that. And obviously then you've got the sort of wild card that is the Yorkshire Academy, where there is no end goal in terms of the academy. The academy's end goal is to put their players in the shop window and hope that other people come along. And I wonder if perhaps there's maybe an idea from some of the clubs to tie up their own players early, see where the gaps are, and then you go knocking on the door of Yorkshire and you say, right, we need we didn't have a 13 this year, we need a 13. Let's get, since his name's in front of me, Wojtek Nowicki to come in at 13. There could be some interesting plays there. In fact, I'm looking at the Yorkshire Academy team sheet. It looks very strong. Some good players in there.
We can talk about this game that's going to go on this evening. I mean, Yorkshire, we never really sort of know where they'll lie in this competition because of the nature of the academy, and obviously, as we say, there's no particular end goal, and they're almost up against one of the arguably the most prestigious academy in the country, in Leicester Tigers. But over the last few years, I remember this game, I think, was an opening game a couple of years ago. And I think Yorkshire put up a good fight then. It could be a real sort of spanner in the works for Leicester's hopes of potentially trying to reclaim a position at the top of the academy tree.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And I mean, as you say, Leicester they've always been a strong side. I mean, and we can row back 30 odd years. They've always been a strong side with good young guys coming through. And you look at the core of that team now that they've got, and that's all those young lads from where they reached 3 academy finals on the spin. The likes of Freddie Stewart and Jack Van Portfleet, George Martin, the Chessums and stuff, all kicking around as part of those teams. James Whitcomb, I think, as well. There's loads and loads of them in that. But you kind of look at the sort of the schools they generally look towards to get their players from. I mean, the strongest year for a lot of theirs. Your Oakhams, your Uppinghams. Stanford have been very good, tailed off a bit towards the end. But it'd be interesting to see how that Leicester team goes. And an away trip to Yorkshire is not an easy one. I don't want to stereotype too much, but we all know that at senior level, a Friday night away trip to the north of the country when it's set to be 0 degrees and snowing probably it's not an easy task.
No, it's not.
And that Yorkshire side, there have been some good teams in Yorkshire this year. Queggs Wakefield went through most of the season unbeaten. Woodhouse Grove are always good. Hillhouse have been better than they've ever been this year. The latest Umanga off the production line at Bishop Burton College starting at 10. There's some real quality in that side. It'll be a much more tasty opening to the Academy League than I think many will be expecting. But the one I'm really excited about, Will,
Yeah,
is this Bath Harlequins game,
yeah.
because of what we said about the
Or
the boundary
Bath
changes.
Exeter, or is
Sorry,
it Bath
Bath.
Exeter?
It is Bath Exeter. Do you know what? I'm reading my team sheets wrong.
Yeah,
But I am, as I say, I'm very excited to see how this Bath side goes, because
yeah,
just with these
absolutely.
boundary changes, it really excites me. Harlequins playing Gloucester, of course. That's
Yeah,
the fixture there, which again I think will be an absolute cracker. I'm really interested to see how Harlequins go, because obviously Gordon's won the Ace League, first time they've managed that, up against Gloucester, so Hartbury dominated, who were the side that Gordon's beat in that final. So there'll be a bit of spice in that one, certainly between some of the senior players. So there's a lot to look forward to this weekend in that, and then obviously over the course of the next. I think it's the next 7 weekends. We've got 5 rounds of games. We've got a little gap at the end of January, just to allow the bodies to recover a little bit. But looking ahead beyond Academy League, it's this term's the exciting one, I always think, because we finish on such a crescendo, don't we? We start with the Academy League, we get some school sevens tournaments, and then we finish up the term sort of heading into Easter with Rosslyn Park National School Sevens, Sedbergh Tens, and the under 18 Six Nations. It's
wow.
that's how you finish a season.
Yeah.
So I mean, we didn't actually chat about this in the build up, but I'm feeling it now. Who who are we looking at in that sort of? Who are we looking at as the teams to look at? Let's look at Rosslyn Park. Who are we thinking is going to be some of the ones to look out for? Millfield going back to back.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really not count sort of your top sides in Rosslyn Park. It's usually sort of them that can kind of kick on. I'd be really interested to see how Harrow go, because I think they've had quite a obviously they did really well sort of over the last couple of years, but have had quite a forward sort of heavy couple of forward heavy sort of season, as it were, so far. Seven's obviously a completely different game match up. I wonder whether if they can potentially get someone like Sam Winters back fit, available, consistent for Rosslyn Park, he could be a guy that can be a real difference maker. Usually Rosslyn Park ends up being about individuals, such as sort of the way of sevens. You have sort of one player that sort of steps up and takes the ball by the horns for a particular team. But I wonder if it could be a year for outside calls, and a year where we do get like I mean, I'm thinking of
What about
an
RGS High Wycombe?
yeah, somewhere like that, where a team like that sort of have had a decent or very good sort of season so far, in the 15s game, and that can really sort of kick on. Again, the other thing is we don't know what the weather will be like at Rosslyn Park. We've literally the last 2 years have been
Could be sunshine, could
opposite.
be snow.
I mean, 2 years ago you literally couldn't move for mud. Last year was pretty idyllic. So like, who knows? And that will obviously change things. But I guess I'm interested to hear, because you've had your ear very much very close to schoolboy rugby so far this term.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be wide open. I mean, if you look at the scope of the 15 season this year, it was as close a season as there's been in my memory.
Everyone's really beaten everyone, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, right, that kind of top end, it's been you look at that little group of Sedbergh, Millfield, Clifton all beat each other.
Yeah.
Wellington College didn't beat any of them, but got within 2 points of them all. Harrow, again, were kind of in that mix. The one that interests me from Rosslyn Park point of view is Cranley, actually, who were unbeaten. Probably didn't have as strong a fixture list as some of those other sides, but what they did have was a week where they played. Well, they beat Brighton College before half term, but they had a week straight after half term, where they played previously unbeaten Epsom and previously unbeaten bar defeat to Clifton Harrow.
Yeah.
And won them both in cracking games. So they're not only are they unbeaten, they're clearly a very good team. So I'd be interested to see how they go, because they've got some good history at Rosslyn Park as well. They're a side where the backs are probably with the strength. They're going to have a lot of their players available to them, which is always important I'm sure we'll be getting into in later pods some of our frustrations with how players are not necessarily available due to international commitments, etc. But I don't think Cranley are going to have a huge number of players that's a worry for. So I think they might be my dark horses to. Is Cranley a dark horse? Perhaps doing them a disservice, but they're certainly one of my bets to go a long way. I think that'll be a really interesting one. And do you know what I wonder as well? Yeah, we hear this debate time and time again from schools that perhaps we think should be in the cup competition rather than in the Vars competition. At Rosslyn Park, and Rosslyn Park, to be fair to them, over the last 2 years have really put an emphasis on trying to move some of those schools across. But I know that one of the big arguments that they come up against is schools saying, "Oh yeah, but there's Welsh colleges and ACE colleges, which we can't compete with them," which is a nonsense because when was the last time an ACE college won? But I wonder if this is the year. If an ACE college really wanted to.
I mean, that ACE sort of league this year has been brilliant, and there've been. I mean, we are still looking at these academy teams. This is what this podcast is going to be like. I imagine we're just literally bouncing all over the place, but hopefully someone's still listening.
Someone's following. It's fine.
Yeah. But you look at. I don't think I've seen more teamships with more ACE sides in it than this year. Sort of there's loads of representation, which is a telltale sign that it's been a good year for ACE colleges. So yeah, we could see one of them sort of rise to the challenge come Rosslyn Park.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, as you say, that's a fair way in the future. End of March, that it will be live here on NextGen 15, as indeed will the Sedbergh Super Tens, and we've got plenty coming up before that. I think the first live event of the season is the Seaford Southern Tens, which is I believe the 26th of January, off the top of my head.
Raiser, isn't it? Usually,
yeah. Always a good one. It's been spoken about quite a lot in recent years about how you've got these two tens tournaments that sort of top and tail the terms rugby in Seaford and Sedbergh, and one feels like a big celebration of sort of getting back underway again. And one feels like a big celebration of the sort of year being concluded, and everyone getting a rest finally. So now it's going to be an interesting one on the schools front. But as I say, the focus early on is going to be on these Academy League games. And I tell you what, we're in for a ripper, aren't we, Will? I'm really looking forward to it. It's hard to know at this stage because obviously we've not seen a lot of form. We've not seen, as ever, we've not seen a lot of team sheets yet. I'm hoping that some of those are going to start coming through. Your usual suspects are a little bit behind, although I did mention to you before the podcast began that Bristol are normally pretty good, but I suspect they're going to be a little bit
busy week for them.
Yeah, I think they've got some distractions.
I have just found a Leicester one. So there you go. I think that's there. I'll be sending that over to you. But that's James Townsend, Oscar Talbot starting at halfbacks, which obviously two boys that have been involved in England setups over the last couple of months. So yeah, that could be interesting. Marshalling the ship this time.
A good young halfback pairing. That'll be interesting. Who are they up against? I'm just having. Oh, of course, yeah, we've got Umanga up at 10 for Yorkshire and Peyton of Grammar School at Leeds at 9. Okay, well, that's going to be an interesting little head-to-head at halfback. But yeah, hopefully, as the season goes on, the team sheets will start coming through. I mean, to be fair to most teams, I give them stick, but most of them are pretty good. I do wish that Premiership Rugby though would impose a deadline on them, a bit like they do at senior level. 12 o'clock on a Friday, let's just get all the team sheets out. Yeah. Although for those that are working in the clubs, perhaps they'd like a different time. It's not all happening at once, but potentially 3 o'clock on a Friday, that'll be fine. But it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be a good sort of 6-7 weeks of action. And more importantly, it's going to be a real chance for these guys to highlight themselves. And indeed for the teams. I mean, it's a funny system. I wonder what you think on it, where everyone's in the shop window. And so it's so hard, I always think, to play in that sort of environment where obviously rugby's a team game. The way to succeed is to be a team man, but ultimately you're all playing for contracts.
Yeah.
It's a really tricky one.
I think I've had some sort of fascinating conversations, in particular with coaches over the last couple of years. I've been fortunate enough to sort of be on the commentary team the last 2 years for the under-18s finals day, which is always a massive slog, but well worth it because you see sort of top quality rugby, 80-minute
It's
games.
the old father-son duo on comms,
It,
isn't it?
it is, it is, yeah. So from dawn till dusk, you literally get age code rugby, which is good fun. But the interesting thing is that I've heard and know, and of course I won't name any names here, but of players that have taken sort of that individual mantle into games like this, into leagues like this and competitions. And from the outside in, looks to be doing really well, scoring brilliant individual tries, breaking tackles, making Instagram reel posts that probably will splatter everywhere and showing them the next big thing. And then come sort of April, May, they're not getting signed. And a lot of people sort of raise their eyebrow and go, well, why is that? And I'll bring these coaches up on it and say, why haven't you signed XYZ? And I say, well, if you actually look at his defensive sets or the way that he's sort of connected as a team, or he should, rather than, yes, he stepped this bloke and bumped the last guy to finish in the corner, but the Niners running a brilliant inside line which we could have scored under the sticks. So they're constantly looking at it from a team perspective and how they gel into a team, which I think should be the emphasis for every player going into this. Is that if you facilitate the team playing well, then these coaches are very smart and very clever. They're not picking off who scored the most amount of tries and who kicks their goals and who wins their scrums. It's everything in between. It's from when they get off the bus to how long they stay at team dinner to literally all of that. So I think, yes, it can sort of become a bit of a head scramble for a player as to how you go about these sort of fixtures. But I think if they from speaking to coaches, if they sort of take it as a team sport, how it's supposed to be played, then they'll get what they sort of deserve.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately these guys are pretty experienced. They know what they're looking for, and they know that just because someone is a superstar as an 18-year-old doesn't really mean a whole lot if they're not the sort of character that's prepared to put the work in off the field for the course of the next 10 years of their life. It's not about today. It's about what sort of person you are for the course of the next 10 years, because you're going to need to get better. No one is so good at 18 that they can just walk in and be a superstar.
And
saying
also
that, Henry Pollock, but
true. There are exceptions to the rule, but it's also, so in terms of selection and contracts, which is always the key buzzwords as we get to this sort of period in time. You've got to understand as well that obviously, yes, Premiership clubs will want to pick the best players out of their academy sides and sign them, but with the financial system that rugby's in at the moment, they can't take chances. That we used to have project players. The most famous one is Tyrese Johnson-Fisher, who was a project player who a couple of academies looked to pick up and go, look, we can expense X salary a year for you to just learn how to play rugby. People they can't do that anymore. They have to have players who are ready now. Roughly, that's why we're seeing so many young players sort of starting in Premiership, Championship games because already in their first year, 2 years, because they have to be. But I also think that it comes down to what these senior sides already have in their back pocket. So you look at a Northampton, for example. Northampton over, I think, the last 2 years on the bounce, they've signed scrum halves.
Yeah.
Then they've got Jake Garside, Tom James, and Alex Mitchell already as part of that senior squad, all 9 options. And I mean, Johnny Wyman and Archie McPartner were starting England scrum halves at age grade level, and I imagine will be for the next couple of years. So if you're a young scrum half coming through Northampton, it's going to be slightly more difficult than being a young sort of tight head prop or a hooker
Yeah.
because it's not necessarily a position that they're looking for. So it's complete luck of the draw, and it's more emphasis, and it will come back to this always, that realistically, just put your head down and play your rugby. And look, you never know. It could be Bath that are looking for a new nine, or a Newcastle looking for a new nine, and they'll watch your game. And it's a lot more open than that sort of linear path that we're used to now.
Well, it goes back to what we said earlier that Pat Lam had said a couple of years back about, the system doesn't quite work because you can be in a scenario where you've got a load of scrum halves, but you don't have a fly half, and you've got another great scrum half coming through, and you're going, there's not a lot we can do here. And if the system opens up a little bit to allow those, and perhaps that's what we've seen with Bath, perhaps they're pulling the trigger on maybe shifting the dial on how the system works a little bit. Will it mean that a scrum half from, as we're using them as an example, a top scrum half from Northampton can go, there's an opportunity for me in Bristol, let's say, and Saints are saying to Bristol, well, look, you've got a load of young fly halves. We don't have a young fly half. These are obviously just examples. There's plenty of players in these positions at these clubs, but we don't have one. So, let's organise a trade, as they would say over in the USA.
What do you think to a draft format? Is that too yank, or should we go full hog?
Absolutely love it. My real wish when we redrew these boundaries, to be honest, was actually that we just did away with the under 18 academy system. We brought it all into a centralised pot, and then we organised a draft, and the top, let's say 30 players all got drafted to Premiership clubs. NFL style, you finished bottom last year, you get first pick in the draft, and so on and so forth. And maybe there was a draft from the Championship for that next tranche of players, and then perhaps a draft for National League One for that next tranche of players. I think that would have been awesome. It would have been really, really cool. Is there an opportunity for it to exist? Perhaps there still is, because perhaps you do go, all right, all of those guys that didn't get contracted this year go into a draft pot.
I think we almost kind of have, we're working towards an unofficial draft, aren't we? Really,
yeah.
That's kind of what we've had over the last couple of years, where we do have those, and if that could be sort of set in stone, because as we say, it's complete luck of the draw what positions are going to pull up where, and as I previously mentioned, I don't want to go in circles, but these you can't sign a player as a winger and wait to train him up to be a 10. Anymore. That just can't happen unless you get a special player like an Angus Hall, who seems to be able to apply himself across all fields, and obviously is a 10, 12, 15 winger, sort of one of these incredible, can play anywhere sort of players.
I'm imagining could have been a pro tennis player, pro cricketer, just does what he wants.
One of those guys, yeah. But like we can't. They don't have that time. So that draft system, if you're able to go, look, brilliant. There's a 10 at Exeter who's not going to get picked up, but we really want him here at Sale, and you can sort of do it in that way. It would be brilliant, but that is complete wishful thinking, isn't it, Angus? We know.
I know, but I'm picturing the publicity it would get would be amazing. You send TNT Sports down and they'll do the live draft.
Should we do the balls? Should we do that?
Yeah, exactly.
Put us on the spinny wheel. We can do that. Read them out. Hold them to the camera.
Let's just run this draft. Perhaps the answer is we do
it ourselves.
We run a mock draft and then we suggest it to everyone else
and
pretend.
Yeah,
exactly.
And just sort of
I'm absolutely delighted to see that so and so has moved to so and so. Just announce it as breaking news.
They're not aware.
If you say something often enough, it's true, right?
Exactly.
But I think I do hope there's some innovation on that. I know that in the past, like one of the arguments against that sort of thing has been the publicity side, and so there's too much pressure on young players. I mean, I kind of get the argument, but at the same time, there's pressure on you anyway. If you're getting signed to a Premiership, I mean, there's only 10 Premiership clubs now. If you're getting signed to one of those, the pressure's on. Yeah, and
if you can't do with pressure, then you shouldn't be in pro sport. So
exactly. But that's how being a professional athlete works. It's really hard, and it's a highly pressurized environment. There's no point in pretending it isn't. I kind of feel, and God, what a cool, if you achieved nothing else, what a cool thing to be able to say that you were the number one draft pick for whoever.
Exactly.
That I think there's a lot of scope for it. I think it could be really, really interesting. It kind of also it leads me into the sort of final thing I wanted us to talk about, which is actually, it is about young guys getting their experience this year. I mean, it does feel like this year more young players, very young players, are getting their chance. We mentioned Angus Hall at Saracens. Henry Pollock obviously is the coming force, and he's up against Kepu Tuipulotu for Bath this weekend. He's going to be coming off the bench, and we're seeing guys getting real opportunities. I mean, Archie McParland, who we mentioned as well, last year, fresh out of school, was getting good game time for Northampton Saints. There does seem to be a real shift towards giving players a chance really early, and not just in the back line where you sort of instinctively go, well, maybe that's a little easier because it's a slightly less physical part of the game. There does seem to be a trend towards it, and it's I've been trying to unpick it in my mind, but it's definitely noticeable.
100%. I think a lot of squads are a lot smaller this year. I think every squad is smaller than the year before, which puts that sort of pressure on. I also think a nod should go to the Championship, because a lot of these players therefore have, like, say, for example, Angus Hall and Tobias Elliott. I'm using Saracens as an example. Nathan Michelot, even sort of Charlie Bracken, have all played now for Saracens senior team this year, but played for Ampthill last year.
Yeah,
and got their time with Ampthill. It's similar fashion with Northampton Saints and Bedford and Gloucester and Hartbury and Exeter and Pirates. You could go on about it for days, but these sides, these teams have allowed them, these Championship sides have allowed them to get used to that sort of level of rugby very early on.
Yeah,
and in some cases, it's come in sort of emergency sort of situations. I don't think, if Bristol were being completely honest, would they want of Sam Worsley to have played as many games as he has so far this season? Probably not. Were they expecting him to be as good as he was? Probably not, because he's fresh out of Clifton. He's sort of learning the ropes still, as you would especially as a fly half. You've got so much information to take on.
Yeah, you've got to run the game for the entire team. It's difficult.
And he was playing in the European Champions Cup, like for Bristol, starting at 10. Obviously, AJ McGinty's injury's been a real blow for them. And they've got Harry Byrne, who's come in on a short-term loan, who's potentially going to plug that gap. Jimmy Williams is back for them as well. So maybe we won't see as much as Sam Worsley, but he's starting this weekend. So who knows? And as I say, yeah, these smaller squads has invited these players to step up, and I think a lot of the time these academy players have been held back a little bit in their opening years, but because every squad is doing it, everyone else is happy too. And Angus, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on how potentially England A has benefited that, because the reintroduction of them has really sort of catapulted a few players from sort of decent England under-20s boys to, okay, well, they could be on a summer tour into Argentina.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because England A could have been used one of two ways. It could have been used as the England second team, and sort of readying the players that might be benching or in the wider squad who aren't getting game time, but you might need them in round 3 in the Six Nations to step up because of an injury. So it could have been used that way, but it's definitely been used, and you can even tell that by the coaching setup, with Mark Mapletoft being the man that's been running the show. It's being used as the next step in the pathway. You could as easily call it the England under-23s as you could the England A team, which it's given these guys a huge amount of exposure. I mean, you look at some of the players that were involved in that, and there was even a jump. A lot of the guys weren't necessarily getting. I mean, there were some examples like Asher Opoku-Forger, who's been getting loads of game time at Sale. But there are examples of guys, Henry Pollock actually wasn't playing loads for Saints before the England A game. After the England A game, I don't think he's not been in a match day 23. If he has, it's just been part of the general rotation policy. Yeah, the match day involvements have gone through the roof, and he's not the only one. So it's definitely sort of shown clubs that he can play in a really tough and really high level environment. Give him give him more opportunity. I think the other thing that's probably had a big impact is the no relegation thing. I know it's a controversial topic, but I think the fact that the worst that can happen is that you lose the game, but it doesn't really matter,
No.
is massive in allowing you to go, well, okay, we will give someone a shot then. Harlequin's going up to Newcastle tonight, I think. They've got Lucas Friday on the bench. They're probably only playing...
Ben Waghorn's on it, I think, as well.
Yeah, exactly. They're giving these young guys a real shot. And they're probably only doing... I mean, they're doing that in part because they're going up to Newcastle, and Newcastle are struggling a little bit. But Newcastle on a Friday night is no easy place to go. Everyone knows that. And, they've had some good results up there, even in the last month or so. So I think that the fact that it's like, well, okay, this is a theoretically easier game, so it's fine. We'll chuck in a couple of young lads and give them their shot, because actually, yeah, we should win. But if we don't, it's not curtains.
No.
Particularly actually where you look at where Quins are now, it's a long shot to get in the top four.
Yeah,
they're also almost certainly not going to fail to qualify for the Champions Cup next year. So they're in a perfect scenario where it's like, do you know what? Let's give these kids a chance because they're good.
Yeah, and it makes financial sense. Why would you go out and buy a sort of 250 grand a year player from France that's not EQP, that's not ticking your boxes, when you've got players in waiting who, yes, might need an extra 3-4 months to settle in, and you might not get the top tier performances that you were going to get from a seasoned pro, but you will, and you'll reap the rewards because they're half as much, they're probably an eighth as much on the academy contract that they're on at the moment. There'll be EQP, which is a massive box for people to tick at the moment, something that kind of goes under the radar, but you need English qualified players in your side. And a lot of them have provided good performances. It's no secret, obviously, England under-20s, this crop that we've got coming through at the moment are, well, factually, the best in the world. They're the world champions. So it's the best crop that we've had in a long time, probably since that sort of, since that last Junior World Cup Championship with sort of when they had that.
Yeah, was it 2016? 2016, I think. Oh, no, 2014, I think it was, wasn't it? With Itoje in that group, yeah.
So, like, and obviously you're talking about Maro Itoje leading the forefront of that. There's a player that's obviously gone on to incredible things. Two years after winning that under-20s World Championships, he was player of the match in a European Champions Cup final.
Yeah.
So, like,
3 years later, he's on a Lions tour.
Exactly. The trajectories, you can see the similarities, can't you? Really, between that and. I mean, we'll rinse his name, but that and a Pollock, because
absolutely
you see where they're sort of going, and yeah, they're a great side that deserve to get these starts and appearances in the Premiership.
Absolutely, and the fascinating thing for me as well with some of these guys coming through is, and you talk about the finance aspect of it, just using the Harlequins example because it's a very obvious one where you've got Danny Kerr is easing his way towards retirement. He won't be earning as much as he once was, but he'll still be a well-paid player at Quins. Will Porter's the man in charge now at 9. He's a young guy. He's probably not on a massive contract. And if Harlequins can bring through a Lucas Friday successfully, you're going to have 2 young English scrum halves, so 2 EQP boys on probably combined well under Danny Kerr overall. You've freed up a whole bunch of salary cap elsewhere to sort out other positions. They're still looking to find the right solution at 12 after Esterhazy when they're going to need to keep every 2-3 years giving Marcus Smith a pay rise. There's a huge advantage to being able to do that. And I mean, even Saints, we keep mentioning him, Henry Pollock, but yeah, they lost Courtney Laws and Lewis Ludlam last year. Or over the summer, 2 guys who probably would have been among their highest earners in the club. I would have thought, such was their level. They've brought in Pearson from London Irish when they went down. He's probably not on a massive amount of money because he needed a gig. And they brought through Henry Pollock from the academy. Yes, a couple of other guys have come in as well, but. Actually, when you're looking at what the sort of the EQP replacement scenario is there, they've got 2 players that are
Well, starting
quality.
England A.
Yeah, exactly. And they're going to be on probably again half of what the combined two that they let go were. So there's a lot to it. I mean, I suppose the worry is that the teams get a little bit too sort of salary cap minded and less is our team better than it was before. But in the examples of those ones, you've got guys coming through, replacing guys that would have been going out anyway just because of age. And you go, well, actually, this is an absolute win for everyone.
There's no need. There's no need for them to go overseas. There's no need for them to pick up players from France, from Ireland, from Wales, because they've got such a good group coming through. I think it'd be very different if they didn't have a top under-20s team coming through. If there wasn't proven quality, not just in that under-20s 23 as well, but because that, again, knock on, because that under-23s team has been so good, there were lots of players that were left out of that are now rightfully sort of getting their sort of opportunities at their clubs. So yeah, I think it's actually quite a positive time for age grade English rugby.
Oh, it's massive. It's absolutely massive.
And that's a plus that the RFU can take away.
They need one at the moment.
Yeah.
So they can rest easy. The young players coming through are of a good quality.
Good quality indeed.
And most importantly, are getting to play rugby. You know, for so long, the gripe, not just of us on the outside looking in, but of the players themselves was, you know, from leaving school to probably age 22, 23, you just didn't play any games. I remember a couple of years back, it was a real frustration for the under 20 setup where they were picking guys who were playing 6-7 games a year, of which 5 of those were for the under 20s. Yeah. The whilst at the very elite end of the game, you know, yes, Mara Itoje needs to play fewer games every year, for example, but actually, Joe Bloggs coming through as a 19-year-old, he needs more. And finally, we're starting to see that these guys are getting more games. And as you mentioned, the championship clubs starting to trust them more, giving them starts. You know, there was a long time where players would be on dual reg in the championship or Nat 1, and they'd be on the bench a lot because they weren't able to commit as much to training, etc. Or it couldn't quite be trusted because they didn't necessarily know the system, or the coaches didn't know them that well. So they'd be on dual reg, but they'd be on the bench, so they weren't playing, weren't getting any game time, weren't developing, and it was almost stifling growth a little bit. Now it's, you know, you look at a London Scottish team, it's almost like a Harlequins B team at times.
It is, and I mean, it ties in perfectly. Hot off the press, we've just been sent the England under-20s training camp to go to Warwick University. Look at that timing, eh?
Absolutely
to go to Warwick
fantastic.
University to go and play Cambridge. And I mean, like brief look through this squad, you've got like Reggie Hammock's played games for Saracens this season. Kane James has played for Exeter, more so Exeter Uni. I'm sure we'll get on to at some point in a future pod the relationship between universities and Premiership teams. McEachran and Raymond have played both for Sale in the Prem Cup. Likewise, obviously, you look at this, but yeah, Josh Bellamy's been starting at fullback for London Scottish. Jack Bracken has got minutes for Saracens and Ampthill. Ben Cohen, Charlie Griffin, as we mentioned. Frank McMillan's been playing a lot for Richmond in that
Played
one.
a lot, yeah. Played a lot.
Jack Kinder's started in the Prem Cup, as has George Pearson for Leicester, Johnny Wyman as well, who we've already mentioned. So that's, I mean, I've missed out a fair few names there that have also had some senior appearances, but 2/3 of that side has played senior rugby this year, and that's just an under-20s training squad right at the start of their. I mean, most of them are uncapped for England under-20s, and they've played senior games. It's usually not that way around.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's
and if you extrapolate it out, you know, rugby's in a position at the moment where it needs people to watch games.
Yeah,
and it needs bums on seats, and it needs excitement, it needs storylines. And if the England under-20s team is now a team where people that you watch every week for their club are turning out for the England under-20s, it's a hell of a lot easier to sell that ticket to someone where because it's it's more like watching an England B team than it is watching a pathway team, because it's actually guys that you see turning out week in, week out. You know a bit about them. It's all right for the likes of you and me who've been seeing these guys for the last 5-6 years. We know it's an easy sell to get me to get a ticket, but for your average Northampton Saints fan, unless it happens that the game is at Franklin's Gardens, are they going to go and watch England under 20s? Probably not. But perhaps they will if there's a few household names or a few sort of obvious future household names in that squad. So I think it could spell the start of a really exciting period. I just hope that Scotland, Wales, and Ireland keep pace with that as well, because the last thing we want is uncompetitive games up in the 20s.
I'm sure people are probably getting towards the end of their car journeys and potentially on the way to academy games. Who knows? That could be a quite good way to spend your time in the car. I mean, Angus, I'm going to put you on the spot quickly and ask you for your winners of this round one. So Yorkshire Leicester tonight.
Yorkshire Leicester tonight. Oh, do you know what? I taught them up so much about how hard a trip up the A1 is on a Friday night, so I'm going to go with Yorkshire.
Yeah, I'll go with Yorkshire as well. I think they might do a job. Bristol Saracens at Shaftesbury Park.
Oh, it's a difficult one. I really like what that Saracen squad looks like in terms. I really like what they're doing with bringing in, involving people from so many state schools. I really like some of the players in that team, but I really like what Bristol are doing at senior level at the moment. And if they do the same thing at 18s, and I think they will, because I think there is a real connection from the academy up to the first team at Bristol, it could be so much fun to watch. I'm going to go another home win.
Well, I'll switch it up and go say that Saracens will do a job on the road. Let's have a look at Harlequins Gloucester. Again, Harlequins the home side. We've spoken a bit about how exciting this game could be.
Yeah, as I said, spicy one. What with the Gordon's Hartpury link there from the Ace final, Gordon's won that. Probably with that in mind, I might go with Quins. I haven't seen their team sheet yet, but I suspect it's going to look really strong. You look at some of the teams that they have access to in their catchment area. It's going to be pretty interesting. I think they'll have Cranley are sort of halfway between Bath and Quins. So there's players on either side. So they'll have a few Cranley boys. They'll have a lot of Gordon's boys. They're going to have a couple of those Brighton College lads as well. I think I'll just lean Quins, although Gloucester have put their team sheet out and it is pretty spicy. But I think I'll go Quins.
I think I'm going to go Quins as well, but similar. I think all these games are going to be quite high scoring. It's probably going to be similar to how the Premiership has been this season, where you get sort of 30 points to 40 and 50 points to 20, and sort of no matter what, sort of if a team's dominant or if it's tight, there's going to be points scored. So when it comes down to sort of bonus points and whatnot, it could be very interesting prospects. But I'll go Quins. I think now this one, Exeter Bath. I think. Angus, I'll just to make it look like I'm not sort of jumping on your coattails every time. I'll have a go at this one first. I think if it was the other way round, Bath will host the Exeter, I think it would be quite easy to call.
Mm-hmm.
I think going down to Truro College, which of course a lot of those Exeter boys will be from. And
I saw their team sheet come through, and one of the big headline statements they made was that their players come from just 4 schools. They've got Truro College, Exeter College, King's School in Devon, I think it is, and Blundell's. So just 4 schools in that team. So there's continuity there.
Yeah, and a team effort on home soil. Look, I think Bath are going to be the team to beat this year. So I'm going to go with Bath.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm the same. I mean, there is that continuity element for Exeter. It's a tricky trip for anyone. No matter how close you are to Truro, it takes forever to get there.
Yeah.
You can feel like you're next door and you're still an hour away. They've got some good players in there. George Newman, the skipper at 9, is a good player. Noah Clifford, an experienced campaigner from last year, out on the wing, but that Bath team is very good, and I just I can't look past the strength of the catchment area with Bath. I mean, they published their squad a couple of months back, their sort of Academy League squad, and you just look through it and you go, that is frightening. You've got Beach and Cliff, who were just about in the Ace final. Millfield, Wellington College, Kingswood, of course, with James Lineker and Evan Gallagher and guys like that. Oscar Thomas, the England hooker as well. I think they're going to be very, very hard to beat this year, particularly given how many players are going to be doubling up. They had a lot of good under-17s in the side that won it last year. They've got all of those guys in, plus they then just get this boost from having these Wellington College and Harrow boys just dumped in on top of that. It's going to be hard to beat them.
I think so. And our final game is Northampton Saints travelling up to Haywood Road to go and play Sale.
Game of the season last year. It was, what was it, like 45, 49, something like that?
It was something like that. It was something ridiculous, wasn't it? I mean, there's a Saints team that potentially not at the powers that they have been over the last 2 years, but like Eduardo Todaro, Archie Appleby, Jack Lawrence, Ollie Hull, they're still going to have boys that are going to be kicking on. I haven't seen much of this Sale squad. Maybe you have.
Yeah, I mean, it's very. I mean, as ever with Sale, it's very Kirkham Grammar School heavy. Yeah. A good sprinkling of Sedbergh School players. So any team that's made up majority of players coming from those two schools,
yeah,
they're gonna be all right. The Saints side is going to be interesting. I do think Todaro, he's a player to watch this year. Yeah, he's finally in his upper sixth. He's been playing first team rugby for about 15 years.
I know, he's one of those. He's like sort of been 18 for the last 10 years. It's ridiculous.
He's a phenomenon, and I think he really could be a player to watch. I'd be highly surprised if he's not playing in the under-26 Nations for Italy.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't. Italy had an emerging. They had an under-23 fixture against Scotland, emerging Scotland, last month, and I think they'll probably do the same next year because it was a bit of a success. I think he'll be in that team as well next year.
What a find he was, by the way, for Ipswich School. I mean,
absolutely incredible.
Kind of came out of nowhere and sort of.
Interesting. Really I was there when he made his debut. It was against Denstone College, and and he was on the bench, and they got an early injury, and he came on. I think he came on at fullback, and then there was another injury, and he moved up to 10. He ran the game. He was he was 15. It was extraordinary. He absolutely bossed the game. And he's been getting better and better ever since. So I think if we're looking at individuals, and we've been talking about individuals a little bit, he's a guy I would urge people to check out. But in terms of this game, I think I fancy Sale.
Yeah,
they always play on a Sunday at home. I've never quite worked out why, but they always play on Sunday at home. There's always continuity because, as I say, the nature of rugby in the Northwest means that they tend to pick from not that many different schools. So there's a lot of continuity. There's bags of talent. Yeah. The fact that Kirkham Grammar School were managing to play fundamentally two first teams through most of the season, because we had a game where they were live against Berkhamsted. The following day they had a cup game against an unbeaten side in AKS Lytham, and they put out two entirely different 15s for both games. They won the cup game. They drew against Berkhamsted. Frightening.
No other sort of school size can have that much strength and depth, really, is it?
It's terrifying. And then you sprinkle in some Sedbergh players, probably some Kings Mac players, a couple of Stockport lads, I reckon. You're looking at something pretty special there. But Saints will be good. Game of the season last year, it wouldn't surprise me if it's game of the weekend this year.
Agreed.
Very nice. Well, I think that's us done. That's certainly some predictions made.
Certainly.
We're almost certainly going to. Well, actually, no. The worst we can be is 4 out of 5 wrong, because we've gone opposites on the Bristol Saracens game.
Yeah, exactly.
We're guaranteed success on one game, unless it's a draw.
Yeah, and then we're really unlucky, and then we will probably stop tuning in.
Yeah, we may have to retire from podcasting at that point. But no, it's good to have rugby back. It feels like it's been a long 3 weeks. It's good to have it back, and it's good to have the Academy League back. And actually, I like it all being in one block. I know the last couple of years we've experimented with a couple of games in August.
A couple of games before and a couple of games after.
It always felt disjointed. It's good to have a season.
You'd kind of forget how teams were getting on, could you? It's just sort of fresh start. You're either good here or you're not. You're not sort of getting second chances. You're not getting chances to feel out opposition before. Brilliant.
Makes it feel like a proper competition.
Indeed.
So it's going to be exciting. We'll be back to review round 1 and look ahead to round 2, and we'll be back with you every week from here till Kingdom Come. But most important of all, it's so exciting to have you on board.
Thank you.
With NextGen 15. We're all so excited to get this coming together of the world of schools rugby up and running, and it's going to be good fun, and more importantly, hopefully for you, the listeners and the viewers, it's going to bring you a whole new level of schools, academy, age grade rugby coverage, because that's what it's all about, highlighting what those guys are doing out there on the pitch.
Indeed. Looking forward to it. And yeah, as you say, there'll be a lot more content to come. We would love to hear what you want to see from this podcast. We're open book. You may be surprised to hear quite a lot of that wasn't as structured as it may have seemed. We didn't have it all written down. So we're open books. I'm sure we always have enough to talk about, Angus and I. But
I've got thoroughly detailed notes in front of me, Will. I've got intro, Will.
I think they went through my. They didn't hit my inbox.
Intro, Will. Young Rugby and NextGen 15 Academy League coming up. There we go.
There you go. Well, we did it, kind of.
We spoke about all of those things.
Things. Just a lot in between.
That's for sure.
Bang for your buck.
Well, for more enlightened content from the two of us, do tune in again. It's all social media. Get in touch with us on, excuse me, at NextGen 15, at NextGenXV, and of course the NextGen 15 Clubhouse. All the details on that will be flying around on your social media channels. We won't let you miss it. Don't you worry about that. You can listen to us pretty much anywhere you can find your podcasts, but of course on the big ones in Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And this will be up on YouTube for those of you that really want to see us. Why you'd want to, I don't know, but it's absolutely your prerogative. So we will see you again next time, Will. Thanks so much. Looking forward to the next one.
Indeed. Looking forward to it.